We're here at Safe Haven Farm Sanctuary. One of the things we've noticed at the sanctuary over and over again is how interested children are in the animals and how much the children care about the animals. And this is one of the themes of the conference that you're going to see. How is it that children who are so deeply concerned about animals grow into adults who are often indifferent to the welfare of other living beings? First, the society teaches children to harden their hearts. Our society transmits the value that animals are very inferior to humans. In fact, to call somebody an animal is usually preceded by the F word. You know, you effing an animal. It's usually an insult to call somebody an animal. Moving Spartacus, where the slave proclaims his human dignity, Kryptos, I think it was, proclaims it in a prison cell by shouting out, "I am not an animal." Well,
yes, you are.
So if they're that inferior, we don't have to pay attention to their feelings, and so that gets inculcated. Second of all, our society creates indifference by shielding the population from what goes on in the factory farms, where most of the meat we eat comes from.
We actually have good evidence that children's concern for animal welfare is based on empathy for animal suffering and not some mistaken view about what animals are. So Karen Broussard and Paul Harris studied children who were independent vegetarians, right? So these are children who are not raised in vegetarian households who have become vegetarians. And they asked these children all of these interesting questions about why they were very vegetarian. So children give reasons. And the reasons they give have to do with the suffering that eating meat implies for those animals. So it's not that that they think that animals are like human beings. They really are thinking about the animal suffering, and they think suffering is bad, and so they don't want to eat meat.
It becomes important for us as adults to really pay attention to what it is that children are enacting through their behaviors and recognize the dilemmas and the tensions and the discomfort that it arises in ourselves. And be okay with that. And allow ourselves to feel the discomfort. Because a lot of what we see with adults interacting with children is to shut down those questions that are impolite. I had a student who once said in a child development class, she said, "Listen, if you're not willing to be embarrassed in public, don't have children." Because they're just going to ask the most, impolite, question. But there is something important in the violation of social norms that children offer us.
In 2001 to 2004 study, Chicago Police Department, a startling propensity for offenders charged with crimes against animals to commit other violent offenses towards human victims. Of those arrested for animal crimes, 65% had been arrested for battery against another person. Now, this is not just one study. The reason why I say it takes so long to go over this, there are studies after studies after studies which back this up. New York's cruelty statutes against animals are located in the Agriculture Markets Law, which is a very obscure place. Our cops, our judges, our prosecutors, our courts, they are not familiar with that in markets law, where there's regulations about selling dairy products or how many vegetables you can sell. We have to get these laws into the penal code where our other criminal statutes are, so that way the cop on the beat understands what it is. They don't say, call the SPCA, which is really a not-for-profit. A not-for-profit should not be doing the work of a law enforcement agency under New York State law, and that is one of our priorities here in New York State at the Humane Society of the United States.
Another critical thinking question, and another critical thinking activity that we do, starts with this very easy question of, what do you picture when you think about a farm? And we get pretty much the idyllic farm all the time. Essentially, kids will paint the picture, and the picture looks like that. And then they are shocked when they see this, what the vast majority of farms are in the United States. They can't believe it. They immediately recognize, well, where are the animals? They're in those sheds. And then they ask the question, what are these big brown leg things? And depending upon their age, I'll tell them the real answer, that they're giant manure lagoons. Because if they're young enough, they hear the word manure, they might just laugh.
4-H children are given an animal, usually a calf, or maybe at a very young age, the calf and the child. And the calf is, the child is told how to raise the calf, to love the calf, to name the calf, to nurture the calf, to do everything with the calf. And the child, most children, as I understand it, come to love their animal very much. And then the moment comes when they take the animal to the fair, and then maybe for the first time the child understands that they are sending that animal off to be slaughtered. Now for many rural children this is a trauma. But for example, as Twyla Francois, who is one of these amazing undercover investigators who has done so much undercover investigative work for Mercy for Animals and Canadians for the ethical treatment of food animals, going into slaughterhouses and everything. She grew up in rural Canada. And she just gives an example in Sister Species, an anthology, where she talks about how her friend at 4-H, her 4-H friend, was weeping and weeping the first year she had to give up her calf and understood that her calf was going to slaughter. She said, but when they handed my friend a check for $1,000 as a prize, she said, already my friend kind of switched and was saying that how she was spending money. And 4-H children have been studied and followed how the first year they're very upset, the second year they're a little bit better with it. By the time they get a little older, their sensitivities, wherever those sensitivities, what has happened to them again? Have they atrophied? Have they been just suppressed? Are they repressed? Because in conclusion kind of here, ridicule is one of the most powerful developmental crushers of feeling. Children, just as they want the praise of their parents and those they look up to and those on whom they are dependent, so they and all of us as adults fear ostracism and ridicule and sniggering, and boys are scared to death of being called sissies. I mean, I grew up with 3 brothers. They weren't going to tell my father they're not going hunting with their dad.